Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, and me, Greg the Single Guy. We are recording episodes from around the globe to tell you about the best kept secret in education. That's right, it's teaching overseas. We're glad to have you join us.
Contrary to what you see on my YouTube channel, I actually tend to ramble quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if I'm going off in the willy wax somewhere and you need to get me back on course, feel free.
Listen, our audience would rather hear from you than us. All right, Greg. You want me to sing the song? You want to bring us in? How do we do this now?
Oh, my God, no, don't sing. Don't sing. All right, welcome to this episode of ITP, the International Teacher Podcast. This is Greg, the Single Guy. Matt, the Family Guy, is once again away, but he'll be joining us soon. And Kent, the Cat Guy. How you doing, Kent?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
Great. And our new guest is Richard Byrne, and he is famous for the tech tools for teachers. It's a lot of free stuff online. He's a great teacher himself, and we welcome him from Maine. How you doing, Richard?
Good. And it's freetechforteachers.com. So if anyone's trying to find it out, if you're trying to Google the phrase, it's free tech for teachers. Yep, you'll find it. And it's nice and warm here. It's 27 Fahrenheit and snowing. It's a beautiful Maine day.
I'm speechless. I'm freezing just thinking about it. I mean, in the desert right now, what is it, Kent?
It's 27 here too, but 27 Celsius.
It's going to go up to a balmy 50 degrees Celsius pretty soon. And for those of you out there speaking Fahrenheit, that's over about 120. Usually it gets here in the summertime. So
yeah, we hit about 80 degrees Fahrenheit here in the desert. Greg and I we're neighbors here in the desert. I can turn and wave to him, and we haven't seen snow in 10 years.
All right, so listen, usually on our podcast, we interview a lot of international teachers and would-be or soon-to-be international teachers and maybe my mom. So other than that, we don't really talk a lot of people that are in your line of work, but that's why we wanted you on our show, because not only are international teachers listening to this, but I think since I've been a follower of yours for years, Richard, and I know Kent is a fan also, but I think international teachers could really learn a lot from what you have to offer online, whether it's webinars or books or websites or tools and all of that. That's what I want to get into, and that was my goal for this interview. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do now?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I do now is I write freetechforteachers.com, and I also have a website called practicaledtech.com where I offer online courses for teachers who want to learn new tech skills to use in their classroom. My mission has always been, for the last almost 16 years now, to use the tools to create some cool learning experiences for kids. That's the bottom line, right? Like the tech tools are there, and I want to use them to create some interesting experiences for kids that they couldn't get without the technology, or couldn't get without a whole lot of extra work without the technology. And my goal is to help teachers figure those things out. And so I offer some courses on how to do that. Kent took one of the courses actually this past fall about animated explanations and how to make little animated videos and animated explanations of all kinds of different concepts. So that's what I do primarily these days. I do some workshops in schools from time to time, and I spend a lot of time taking my kids to school in the morning and picking them up in the afternoon. But before that, I got started in education 20 years ago. 20 years ago now. My very first job was teaching high school language arts, and then I taught social studies for a number of years, and I also taught computer science.
You seem to be someone who's been around the business for a long time, and you're a young guy. You got young kids, you're a young guy, but it feels like you've been around forever. When did you start putting it out there, technology, and when did you enter the YouTube verse?
Well, let's see. In 2007, I started writing freetechforteachers.com, and I did that as kind of an offshoot of a grant-funded workshop that I went to. My school was part of a school consortium, and we had 3 different tracks that we could pick from to kind of study and pursue. And the one that I picked was technology, and one of the things we had to do was, write about what we were doing, right? Kind of write about our experiences. And so I started that as a little blog, and then I realized, hey, people are reading this. Much to my surprise, people were actually reading what I was writing, and I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed writing it, and so I just kept on doing it. The YouTube channel, oh gosh, the YouTube channel, I think I started in 2009, but I didn't really start putting an emphasis on the video aspect until about 2014, 2015. But you can go back on my YouTube channel and you'll find things. I think from 2009 was probably when I started the YouTube channel. The actual effort to make a lot of videos started around 2014, 2015. And now there's, I don't know how many there are, 1,700, 1,800 videos on there, and 17,000 and change blog posts I've written. So.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
Oh,
I've written
that's
a lot.
Like, that's mind-boggling. I'm confused already. That's a lot of videos. Wow, and it's a lot of how-to, right? You do a lot of screen share type of walkthroughs on how to use different technologies, so people can see you on the screen and they can follow along and stop while they're working on it and watching you at the same time, right?
That's the goal of everything I try to do, is to try to make it easy to follow. I always think about, I spent most of my teaching career as a social studies teacher, working with other social studies teachers who, we kind of have a reputation sometimes of being stuck in the mud. We teach history. We want to study the old stuff. So I always think about, okay, who is the grumpiest person in my department who doesn't want to use their computer, and how do I help him or her get going?
Or take their computer from them and use an extra computer in your room. That's what I do.
Yeah. No, I never did that. But that's what I try to think about is kind of be as practical as possible with this, and is it easy to follow? And that's why all my videos are short. It's very rare that I have a video that goes more than 5 or 6 minutes. I'd rather have somebody watch 2 or 3 or 4 minute videos than try to sit through a 12-minute video, because I know by the time we get to the 11th minute in that 12-minute video that they're gone. They're not really paying attention to it anymore. But if I can chunk it out into some small sections, that's what I try to do. And so, my videos are really pretty straightforward. I don't do the like, share, subscribe thing that, a typical YouTuber does. And I try to keep my face out of it for the most part, because I'm not that good to look at.
Well, you got that voice, though. As you said in one of your videos, it's that Ray Romano voice. I can listen to it all.
Ray Romano, yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that. I had never heard that until I gave a keynote at a conference in Nebraska. Back, this is probably 12 or 13 years ago. I keynoted at a conference in Nebraska. And afterwards, everybody came up to me and said, "Do you know you sound like Ray Romano?" I'm like, "No." And I still don't hear it myself unless I play it back to myself.
So I have a question. Is that the mammoth from Ice Age?
Yes.
That's who I'm thinking of? I mean, I don't know names very well for movies, but that's okay. That's who I can
Everybody
think of.
loves Raymond.
Everybody loves Raymond.
I don't. I never watched the show.
But I will say this, though. For someone who, you don't put yourself, subscribe, notify, I think you're at 45,000 subscribers now. Is that about right?
Yeah. Yep, that's about right.
Part of your persona, Richard, is you're energetic and you're positive. And, you come across, you got this great energy. Do you ever sit around late at night and think about teachers and technology and just kind of cry into your pillow just a little bit? Do you ever have those moments where you're just like, there are some teachers I'm never going to quite reach? How do you stay so positive with this?
No, not late at night. I've got little kids. I go to bed around 8:15. So that's not late at night. But I do have moments in the middle of the day sometimes, particularly, it kind of ebbs and flows. There's times where I'm like, if I have to explain how to print a Google document one more time, then I might get a little frustrated. And actually, even that is actually a bad example, because I don't mind doing that. In fact, I kind of like doing that, because that makes me feel helpful, right? It feels like I'm actually helping someone solve their problem. The ones that kind of wear on me sometimes is not teachers. it's the teachers don't wear on me. People who are in schools don't wear on me. It is the business people that wear on me. It's the PR people who have zero experience teaching or leading schools, who send me a pitch about their next game-changing, revolutionizing app that is total crap. And they try to sell it to me as, oh, you should really tell people about this. I'm like, no, it's a terrible product. I'm not going to tell people about it. Those are the ones that wear on me. Every morning when I open my email, it is 15, 20 pitches from various PR people, PR companies that are trying to sell me on their next great thing. And I will say, like, once a week, one of those are worthwhile.
You answered our email. I can't believe it, Kent.
Yeah.
He didn't just like throw us into the trash like other people we won't mention have. That's true. We're not monetizing anything either, right?
You're not a PR firm. And and to be honest with you, if it's a company whose founder comes right to me and says, hey, I was a high school teacher, or I was an elementary school principal, and I had this idea, and those I don't mind. In fact, I kind of like those. It's when it really is like someone's hired a big PR firm, and the PR firm has outsourced it down to their entry-level person who's never spent time in the classroom, and they're trying to sell me on it. I'll give you a classic example. This one still burns in my mind from 8 years ago. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, I want to tell you about our product. And I'm like, okay, great. It's been developed by this famous person. I will keep the name out of this famous person who I did not know was famous, right? Like, what's famous to you? I'm a 44-year-old man in the United States. My perception of famous stuff ended around Kurt Cobain's death, right? So if it happened after the grunge era, I probably don't know who they are. But anyway, and they said to me, this is going to be great. Da, 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 da. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll take the call with you. And they started the call with, are you familiar with Common Core standards?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar with Common Core standards. You don't need to explain them to me. Like, did you spend any time reading what I write?
No, they did nothing. They did nothing before talking to you.
That's the thing that, and I actually wrote a long blog post about it and put it on LinkedIn, 8 years ago. You could probably find it if you want to. And I called it "Stop Talking Down to Teachers." And
Good
it
for
was.
you.
It was.
I think I've read that one. Yes.
Yeah, it was based on that PR firm that started out with, "Are you familiar with Common Core standards?" I'm like,
Duh.
come on, know your audience. So anyway, that's my rant. That's my rant about PR firms and how they don't know their audience, and that's what grinds on me. It's not teachers. It's not answering the same question about printing Google Docs or any of that stuff. It's the business side of the ed tech landscape that wears on me after a while.
Well, I tell you what, every week, one of the things that's kept me going over the years, and I've been in different countries, so has Kent, and where we go, some schools, they don't have a whole lot of budget for tech, or they aren't willing to pilot something until they know it works. You go off on your own. So a lot of free tools are what I have relied on over the years. Your newsletter basically is the greatest thing in the world. I don't even have to go looking up to see what you're up to. I get an email dumped in my mailbox with thousands of other subscribers. About every week you send one out, and it has 3 or 4 tools that you're investigating, and then it has a little link to a video you've already done in the past and you're revisiting, or they've upped it or they've changed it. And I love that because the work is taken out of everything for the teacher, because it goes right to their email box and they can decide whether or not they have time to see what you have and then go visit your website, etc. I love that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I try to send that out every Sunday evening Eastern time. So if you're in the U.S., if you're in other parts of the world, it might be Tuesday morning.
Correct.
If you're in New Zealand, it might be Tuesday morning when you get my email. But yeah, I write it every weekend. Spoiler alert, I actually write it on Friday morning. I send it on Sunday night.
Oh, you spoiled it. Oh.
Yeah, so I don't actually write it on Sunday night. Sunday nights I try to, hang out with my kids and get ready for the week.
Tell us a little bit about your kids. You have drawings in the background. The people listening to this cannot see you, but we can see in the background you've got some stuff on the wall there. Kent, what are you laughing about? They're lucky they can't see you or me.
So let me tell you, as we are recording this right now, tomorrow I'm flying to Chicago to speak at an event. And my daughter, my 6-year-old, for Christmas, made me, those of you who are listening, you're not going to see it, but everybody else will see it, this carry-along picture book. She made this for me for when I travel. And it's pictures of our family that she put together for me for Christmas. And, you know,
to carry along.
Lots of pictures to carry along. And so here's another little part of my life that people don't expect from my YouTube or from anywhere else, is that I carry along a notebook everywhere I go for ideas and kind of my daily plan of what I'm going to try to do that day. And so I put my little carry along picture book in my notebook and take it with me on trips.
I thought you'd be carrying an iPad. Kent and I are both such techies that we tag along with iPads. I would never even carry a notebook anymore. It's just crazy, I know. I mean, a lot of techies have notebooks and write things down, but it is quicker with a notebook. I just fell in love with my iPad.
It's quicker with It's quicker with my notebook. The other thing that I like about it is I have stacks of them going back for years on my bookshelf. So I'm reaching up. You guys can't see it, but I'm reaching up to my bookshelf. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them that I've filled out in the last year.
Holy cow.
With notebooks. I also use unlined paper because I do a lot of kind of mind mapping type of stuff and a lot of that. So yeah. So my 6-year-old. I have a 6-year-old who's in kindergarten and she's just learning to use her Chromebook right now. Kind of cool. And I have a 5-year-old who is in preschool and is very ready for kindergarten right now. Yeah. So yeah, I have a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old, and my partner is employed in the medical field, and most of my day these days is spending time. I shouldn't say most of my days, but a lot of my time every day is with my kids.
How do you describe yourselves when Uncle Larry calls you from Idaho or Iowa and says, "Well, what do you do again, Richard?" What do you tell people?
What do I tell people? It kind of depends on when I'm asked at the time. But I will say that primarily I am a technology consultant. Probably the quickest way to, if someone asks me on the ski lift, by the way, I teach skiing lessons on the weekend. If someone asks me, what do you do? I say, I'm a technology consultant focused on education. Now, what does that look like? That's kind of a catch-all. And, that's what it says on my tax return to the IRS.
Awesome.
That's kind of a catch-all. Really, my goal is help teachers use technology to create some cool learning experiences for their kids. The IRS doesn't understand what that means if I try to put that all in my tax return, though.
So now, Richard, you are not teaching this year, but you've been a teacher for 20-some-odd years, and you've been doing this as you're teaching. So I can't imagine what kind of a load you're putting on yourself just out of passion for it. In the beginning, you're just like, I want to share this stuff, and you got rolling with it, and you can template a whole lot of it, but still there's a lot of work that goes into it. Before you started getting pitched by PRs, right, which you don't like to talk to, not all the time, but not the crazy ones, but I can't imagine how you just started this avalanche of technology, because over 20 years, 16 years you've been doing this, so excuse me, and I think I've been a follower for like 15, so I guess my question, I lost it, didn't I? Kent, what did I just ask him? Your
question is, how do you find time for it?
Yeah, there you go. Full-time teacher and consultant.
Yeah, so let me back up. When I started, I was a single guy with no kids and, all the fun things that go along with being a single guy. For me, that meant, hey, sitting down at night, watching TV and writing. It was really exciting. I started kind of at the start of the Web 2.0 movement, right? If you go back and Chris Anderson had just written Free, and that was a big bestseller, and Chris Brogan had just published Trust Agent. So there was this huge wave of Web 2.0 things out there, and all these companies that were using that model of, hey, let's just try to get as many users as we can, and then we'll figure out the business model later type of stuff. And it was just exciting. It was just an exciting time to see so much stuff coming out. Twitter got started around that time, kind of, got hooked in with some cool people who were not in education, but were in tech, and then started to realize, oh, there's a lot of crossover here. The idea of turning the blog into something more than just a hobby, kind of came along almost, just from having interactions on Twitter and, just kind of reading a lot of stuff. But the moment that it went, it clicked for me, I saw something from Robert Scoble, a very well-known Silicon Valley blogger. He was working for Microsoft at the time, and he did an interview with Pete Cashmore, who had started a website called Mashable, right? And Mashable, I think, has been since acquired by some other massive conglomerate. But this was, back in 2007, 2008-ish, somewhere, maybe 2008, I saw the interview. And he asked Pete, how did you get started? What was the secret to your success? And he said, I locked myself in my room and just wrote about tech as long as I could. I'm like, I can do that. I can just keep writing about this stuff. And so that's what I did, because it was fun and I was enjoying it, and I made the time for it. Fast forward 16 years or 15 years now, and it's a balancing act. It is a balancing act today. The writing part of it is a little bit formulaic for me at this point. I've just been doing it for so long, I kind of have in my mind, okay, this is how I'm going to write about it. And the actual writing, I can write pretty quickly. Videos take me longer to do, despite the fact that they look really basic. They do take a while to do, and it's just a matter of kind of I prioritize it. There are some other things I'd like to do some days. Some days I'd rather just go make a snowball, make a snowman. But it's like anything else, I keep doing it. And at the end of the day, I do it because when I get an email from a teacher, and I'll tell you, this happened to me Sunday morning. I got an email from a teacher. I was checking my inbox. I usually don't check my inbox on the weekends unless I'm looking for something specific. And I was looking for something specific from the ski school that I work at. I needed an update to my schedule for the ski school. And I happened to notice an email from a teacher who had asked me for help with image file formats. She was having some trouble with image file formats. I had made her a short screencast video, replied to her, and I didn't hear anything back from her. And this happens. This often happens. People always ask me things. I'll send them a little help. I never hear back from them. But this person emailed me back 10 days later, and it was Sunday morning, and I read it. And she's like, "Thank you so much. This is perfect. This is exactly what I needed." And I wrote back to her and I said, "Thank you. That made my morning." That sort of thing is what makes my morning. That's what kind of keeps me going, is when I get that email from a teacher. It's like, this was the perfect thing. This was exactly what I needed for my class. There's exactly what I needed to solve this problem or do this thing in my classroom. That's what I like about it. That's why I keep doing it. Yeah, that's it.
You've helped a lot of people here, and you're very serious and passionate about it. So I have a quick question for you. Have you ever helped somebody and done it as a joke on a buddy, or directed them in a different way?
None that I've done to a specific person. However, I will say 7 or 8 years ago on April Fool's Day, I did publish, no, maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's 10 years ago now. I did publish a blog post that I wrote up that was for a product that didn't exist. and I called it Magic Grade. Magic Grade was going to magically grade students' essays for you. And I went on for 3 or 4 paragraphs about it. And the link at the bottom that I said, try Magic Grade today, was a link to the Wikipedia article about April Fool's Day. And then I shared it on my Facebook page. got so many people who were mad, flat out. I remember one guy in particular was flat out mad that I had written this thing that wasn't true, that was disingenuous, yada yada yada. Like, I mean, he went on for. I think his response to me was longer than what I had originally written. Just went on for. And so since then, I have not played any practical jokes or tried anything like that because people just get some people just. I'll leave it at that. I haven't tried it since then.
One of my colleagues for I think it was right around April Fool's Day. She had gone around all the printers in school and she put down a little sign on each one that said, "These are voice-activated printers now." So you see all these people like screaming it, talking into the printer, and I'm just like, oh my God.
One of the things that I've discovered over the years is the internet behavior or understanding of internet behavior that some people have or don't have based on, and I discovered this, based on emails I would get from folks about things that I had appearing next to my articles on my website. So there's some Google AdSense units on the right-hand side of my website. And I will occasionally get an email from someone who says, "I can't believe you're endorsing such and such candidate," or "I can't believe your website has ads for Victoria's Secret on it," or something like that. And I'm like, okay, that's your internet browsing history. That's not me showing up in there.
Oh, sorry. Let me close that screen. Sorry, I didn't realize I had that one open.
Yeah. So I've had some incidents like that over the years.
Well, you're dealing with a lot of novices, though, right? There's a lot of people learning from you, and I know it's hard to step back and say that. I mean, it's sort of funny that we talk about that, but people don't know as much as we think we give credit to, right? There's adults that don't know that kind of stuff, and it's such another.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead, Kit. Sorry.
Well, let me just jump in on that note. Richard, how have teachers changed since you began working with them in technology?
I will say that the biggest change is willingness to try free things has changed drastically. In fact, I was just talking with my buddy Rushton Hurley. He and I do a little semi-weekly recording. And we were just talking about the fact that 15 years ago, people would try anything, any website. And today there's a lot more skepticism about, okay, what's happening with my data, right? There's a lot more about, there's a lot more of that. There's a lot more. So I don't want to say I don't want to say that there's less willingness to try. I think there's more
caution. They're cautious.
More caution, more critique about web tools that teachers are willing to try or willing to put in your classroom. I will say the other thing that changed, kind of on a similar note, is the number of tools that people are willing to try. Period. Right? Like I've noticed more and more people are like, well, I use these 5 things. I use Kahoot, I use Screencastify, I use 3 other products, and that's all I need. Right? Like they're really comfortable with those. And beyond that, I'm like, it better be really, really good if I'm going to try it, right? So there's that piece, and I'll say, the other thing that's probably changed a little bit is what we consider to be technology integration, right? And I can remember looking at one of my first teacher evaluations when I was being evaluated as a new teacher, and it said, use of technology was like making a PowerPoint. Like, did you use PowerPoint? Yes. Check. 5 stars for you, right? Now, use of technology, I think needs to be more. Is definitely more than that, but people are looking for a little bit more in terms of, did we go beyond? Sorry, something just started beeping in my office. Did we?
Oh, no beeping. You better check that out.
We might need to edit that part.
Okay.
Sorry. Hey, since you guys are in the Middle East, you should be happy. The oil delivery truck just pulled up too outside my window.
We
sent
sent him
him
there.
over.
Did he finally get there? We'll take a moment's break now to remind you how to reach out to us. Of course, you can address any negative comments to Kent, the cat guy. We do love to hear from you. If you're out on Facebook, we don't do that, but our handle on both Instagram and Twitter are at ITPExpats with an S, ITPEXPATS. As a handle, if you want to, you can send us an old email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com, or you can visit us at our new website at www.itpexpat.com. www.itpexpat.com. Well, back to the show.
What I was trying to say is that, now people are looking for more than just students interacting with a website, but actually building things with a website, right? Or building things, as opposed to, in the past it would be, I'll take Kahoot because they're, the behemoth in the room right now. Kahoot type of things. People were really excited about that 6 or 7 years ago because now a teacher could make a game that students could interact with. Right? Now it's, I want to go beyond Kahoot, or I want to go beyond that kind of thing, and I want students in the driver's seat. Right? And so I think that's really important, is putting students in the driver's seat, and hopefully more people move that way. Right? It's starting to move that way. I'd like to see more people moving that way. If I could channel my inner Gary Steger monologue, I would say kids need to do things with the computer that puts them in control of. They're making things with the computer as opposed to they're reacting to things made by somebody else on the computer, if that makes sense. Right? So we're getting into things like Construct 3 is kind of one of my favorite tools right now for kids to make video games that are not quiz-based video games. Any kid could, I shouldn't say any kid, but you could go on Kahoot and make a quiz-based game, right? But these are actual, we're getting into role-playing type of games. And, so Construct 3 is one of those that I get really excited about. Or, tools where students are taking an idea that they have for an app and actually building the app and making the app. That's why I love the MIT App Inventor, for example. And that's been around for a long time. And I remember the first time I showed MIT App Inventor at a conference was back in 2011. I was in Nebraska. And gosh, I probably had 45, 50 people in the room. And there were like 2 people who were interested in trying it. And now if I talk about the MIT App Inventor, now I can do a whole session just on MIT App Inventor at a conference, and I'll get I'll get 50 people, and they all want to try it. That's definitely a change for the better, I think.
Part of the change that I've seen as a tech advisor or a tech person is that the age, right? The age of my age, like in the 50s and 40s, you see changes going on with teachers interested in tech and hopefully moving towards the students learning it, right? But they have this kind of apprehension about like, I'm not that good with tech. But the cool thing is that as you're getting down to your 30s and 20s, the new teachers that are coming in are starting to grab onto these kinds of ideas, and they're going all in tech. And not to mention, of course, COVID and all that time with online learning, there was a big jump in all of the online tools. But I noticed that I really love teaching 20, 30-year-olds and coaching them on using different tools because they're the ones that are going to jump right in and say, hey, I've already looked at this. I love it. I want a way to interact with the kids. They mash things together, right? I don't know if you've seen that kind of a trend also, but I definitely think it's the age group that has a lot to do with it because, somebody that's in their 50s, they can minimize the amount of tech they use in school, right?
Oh, yeah. To kind of follow up on that, I would say I'm fortunate that I live and work in a small community, and I now have at my daughter's preschool, my daughter's elementary school, there are 3 teachers in that school who are in their early 30s. Now I'm aging myself. Who are in their early 30s who were my students in high school years ago.
God, you're
and
old.
I've had a couple of them say to me, I learned more about using technology from you as my teacher in high school than I did in my courses for becoming a teacher.
That's a shame. That's too bad. But not everybody uses tech the way that we do as techies. I mean, Kent is a very heavy tech person in his classroom. I go into his classroom, and he teaches a lot with multiple tools, and his students are well-versed. I think throughout the years, they come out of his classroom ready for 5th grade. In a 5th grade, they're maybe not in a as high of a tech savvy classroom, or maybe they are. It's exciting, but I wish everybody was into tech like we are. They just aren't, And sometimes teachers just don't have enough time. We've thrown so much at them, right? I guess that's where I wanted to go with that. It's fascinating to hear you talk about a small little town in Maine. And have you been in Maine the whole time? Like since you?
Yeah, I've been in Maine all of my adult life.
Wow. Hey,
Yeah.
let's ask you some more personal questions then. Have you ever traveled outside of the States?
Oh yeah, yep. Let's see. I've spoken to work-wise or
Oh
just
man,
personal-wise?
anything you want. I mean, traveled outside the States.
All right. I've spoken at conferences in Australia, all over Europe for various events. I was supposed to go to an event in Singapore right around the time that COVID kicked off, so that got.
I wish I was famous. Kent, have you ever traveled to speak to some people, Kent? Professionally, have you ever traveled like he has to go and talk to people overseas?
No, I've traveled to listen to people talk overseas. You been to the Middle East, Richard?
I have not been to the Middle East. I have been invited a couple of times, and both times it has not worked out. Either for both times it's been a scheduling conflict in one way, shape, or form. Once was I'd already been booked for something else. The other time was my daughter was being born, so I couldn't really miss that. That would have been a really hard sell. So
Let me apologize. I don't mean to put you down by saying, have you been out of the States? I just know a lot of people that live in the States have never left the States except for going down to Mexico, and I didn't mean that. I don't mean that as a dig on you or anything.
No,
I know our
no.
listeners are
No,
from I think we have 110 different countries now, Richard. So hopefully you're going to start getting more and more people onto your tech tools and inviting you to speak even, right? We've had some great directors from schools, and hopefully they'll reach out and they'll say, hey, man, I heard him on ITP, and this is the guy. We need to have him come and talk to our teachers. Maybe we can get our school to get you out here at some point. But that's fascinating that you've been not only just traveling, but you've been overseas with this passion of yours to teach tech. And to what's the biggest group you've ever spoken to, the biggest audience?
Oh, gosh. In the thousands. I'm trying to think of where the biggest one would have been. Probably in Texas.
Everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Probably in Texas for the Texas Library Association. That might have been the biggest one that comes to mind. There's been some other. Oh, actually, NC Ties, North Carolina Technology. That one's definitely been in the over 1,000. Been quite a few that have been well over 1,000 or more. But speaking of international travel, so wow, I guess people are actually reading stuff. I'm writing moments. Was back in 2012. 2012, I went to Iceland to ride my bike. I went to Iceland to go mountain biking with my girlfriend at the time, who was also a mountain biker. It was actually kind of her idea to go. And so we get picked up at the airport by our guide for the trip. And he says, "Hey, we have to swing by my house to pick up my wife. She's going on the trip with us." I'm like, "Okay, great, So she gets in the van. My girlfriend at the time was very, very chatty, more chatty than me, and
No way.
could talk to anybody about anything. So it starts talking, and so the wife of our guide says, "Oh, and Richard, I know what you do." I'm like, "How do you know?" She's like, oh, I've been reading your blog for years. She was an English teacher in Iceland, and she's like, oh, I've been reading your blog for years. I'm like, oh.
Kent, does that ever happen to you?
No, but I do want to say that Richard learned really quickly how to ride a mountain bike that week.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and Jen, if you're listening to this, it was a great trip. We're still great. We're still great friends. Yeah, so it was a great trip mountain biking in Iceland, but with an English teacher.
Who in the business do you follow? Do you like and check in on once in a while?
Let's see. First name that comes to mind is Gary Steger. I've been a fan of Gary's for years. He did some work in Maine years ago. So Gary's the first name that always comes to mind. Vicky Davis, one of the absolutely nicest people in the world, let alone in the ed tech space, is a person I check in with. Beth Holland, who works for an organization called COSIN. I've known Beth for a long time. Wonderful person. I check in with them quite often. Greg Kulowick lives just down the road from me, about 150 miles down the road from me. Follow what he's doing. If you're into rubrics and assessment, Greg's got some cool things going on with his visual rubrics. So check that out. Yeah, those are some of the names that I often think about.
Let me throw another question at you. Are you a video gamer? You like video games?
The last video game that I played was probably Donkey Kong around 1985.
Okay, so you're not.
That's a no,
You're not
Kent.
rushing. That's a no. I'm wondering. I'm picturing a young Richard Byrne growing up, and you're maybe more board games, more Discovery toys, not so much the Nintendo.
Yeah, I never had a Nintendo. The last video game system I had was ColecoVision, and I want to say it was like somewhere around 1985. My mother ran over the cord with the vacuum cleaner and frayed it, and that was the last time I played a video game system. That was the last video game system I had. Not that I'm upset about that 40 years later.
Yeah, it was some accident. Have your kids expressed interest in owning video games?
No, they haven't. In fact, my 6-year-old, she's 6, as she will point out, she just turned 6 and a half. She's just now learned how to turn on the television with the remote. So, yeah, no, they really haven't expressed that. My own childhood a lot of it was outside. A lot of it was spent, building jumps for my bike and jumping off of stuff back before helmets were invented, and I still survived.
What did people in Maine? Did you grow up in Maine? You said you've lived most of your life there.
I did not grow up in Maine. No, I grew up in Connecticut for the most part. About 250 miles south of where I live now. Yeah, but I've been in Maine all my adult life. I love to fish, love to be outside. Still love riding my bike. I ride a lot. I teach skiing, as I mentioned. I teach skiing lessons on the weekends. My kids do outdoor stuff more in the summer than in the winter, but still in the winter they're out skiing. They're out. We go snowshoeing. My 6-year-old is really excited about the prospect of going out to look for owl pellets. Because I
love owl pellets.
This is a great time of year to go look for owl pellets. Yeah, her kindergarten class dissected some owl pellets a few weeks ago, and I know some spots where a lot of owls nest near our house, and so after the snow falls, it's really easy to go and find them. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that we do, and geocaching, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, before I turn this back over to Greg, one more thing. What do you got coming up? What are some of the things you've been working on?
So right now, as we speak on February 28th, I am working on a new course for teachers who are interested in doing video projects with their kids. So I'm working on a new course for that. I'm also working on a new book about search strategies and teaching search strategies to kids, getting kids to go beyond the first page of Google results and how to really do research and looking at research and internet search as a process as opposed to a set of tasks. A lot of what's done with teaching kids how to search is teaching them, like, okay, what are the search operators, right? And that's valuable, that is useful, but it's only a tiny part of the process. And so I'm working on developing some more resources about that. Those are the big ones.
Oh, is it time for me now? I love the video idea. I mean, we've chosen sort of WeVideo as one of our choices. At our school, they invested a little bit in that, and school-wide, district-wide, a couple other ideas that they've used. I do like the tools that we've been using. We keep introducing a lot more. Of all the things you said today, the most important thing I've taken about this from this whole podcast, besides the fact you've only played Coleco back in the day, was the idea of getting it into the kids' hands, right? And the teachers that are trying to move the tech into the kids creating and posting and having a platform for that. I love that. Since you're a bicyclist and you've been bringing this up and you've been overseas in many different places, it sounds like, and you take your bike with you, hopefully. If you listen back on our ITP episode 9, we had a guest on there named Graydon Hazenberg, and he's a good friend of mine. We taught together in Egypt, and he bicycles all over the world, and he wrote a book called Pedaling to Kailash. I think I said that correctly. The cycling adventures and misadventures across the roof of the world. So if he inspires you at all,
Cool.
I wanted to share that with you, Richard, as a guest. You guys maybe connect on Facebook or something. My other comment is I recently got on Facebook and told my kids something about that. And one of the kids looks at me and goes, God, you're old. You still use Facebook? You know, it seems like people that use Facebook are our age now that we've finally figured out how to use it 20 years later. That everybody's using it, right? Twitter's gone downhill. I can't believe people are using that anymore now that they've gone through a lot of changes. There's some opening going on there. What do you think are the newest things that kids are using now, especially middle school, high school is where you're at? What are some of the things that you've seen as far as a trend recently?
Where I am, the kids are still very much into TikTok. I find it really interesting. Regional adoption of various social media platforms. I think there's a lot of that, and here where my little corner of the world, it's still TikTok crazy, although the U.S. government may put an end to that before
they just did.
too long.
They just did. Yeah.
There's. I know, like in the state of Maine, for example, they now do not allow TikTok to be installed on any state-owned devices. So that's a change. But I do still see a lot of kids really into making short videos, and I still see a lot of kids. Talk to a lot of kids, students who are babysitting my own children, right? The thing that they're still into is short videos. Whether that's whether it's YouTube Shorts, which is kind of a newer YouTube phenomenon, YouTube Shorts or Instagram Shorts or Instagram Reels or TikTok Reels. That's still the thing. Maybe it's just because I'm not in a school this year. But I'm hearing less of it from friends of mine who are in schools and friends of mine who are principals and superintendents. Fewer of, I'll call them stupid challenges. Yeah. In my area, there's been a lot of emphasis on educating students about that, which is, the job of all of us. I don't care if you teach, if you teach algebra or you teach phys ed. So I shouldn't say phys ed that way.
Yeah, that's old school.
I have aspirations.
That's old school, phys ed.
Whatever it is, I think it's part of our job to educate kids about how they're using technology. And part of that starts with teachers forming good habits. I mentioned earlier, seeing interactions to my Facebook posts over the years, and my negative experience with April Fool's Day. I still see things I share on Facebook sometimes, or things things I email. Sometimes people reply to my emails thinking they're forwarding it to their friends. That happens fairly often. And I will see things written like, "Hey, I didn't watch this video, but you might want to," or "Hey, I haven't tried this, but maybe you want to." I'm like,
It's like when you walk up to somebody and say, "This tastes terrible. Here, try it."
yeah. I mean, and I understand that they're trusting me, that they're trusting that I'm a source of good information for them, but still there's an element of, before you share it, actually watch the video,
Take it for a run.
before you
Yep.
share it, do that. And so I think that, that's part of the modeling, right? That just you got to practice it yourself before you teach it to the kids. And I get it. I get that there's times when you're going to share something because it's just like quick, and hey, my friend was talking to me about a problem with file conversions, and I just came across this file conversion video, right? Like, I get that, but for the most part,
I have one story to share with you. This is about my parents, and I don't know, you're a techie, so maybe this has happened to you. And I don't know if I've shared this with Kent before, but I was going down, I'm from Wisconsin, and I was in the summertime. I went home visiting friends, and I went down this river in an inner tube, and I had my cell phone in a plastic bag, this a couple years back. And all of a sudden the phone's ringing, and I open up the little pack, put down my beer, and it's my mom calling me from Hawaii. And she's like, "Greg, I sorry to bother you, but I just have a quick question. How do I get my pictures from the iPhone to the iPad? Because I'm trying to share it with the other couple we're with and show them on a bigger screen." And I'm like, "Mom, I can't really do this." She's like, "Oh, I know. It won't take but a minute. Just tell me how to do it." And I was like, I don't know if you have family members. I mean, it's sort of strange to be a techie. You have all these friends and family calling you for these tech tips, right? Have you had anything strange like that?
Yep, I have family members who ask me questions like that
While you're on the ski hill?
Yeah, I have an uncle who will occasionally text me to say, "Hey, I have a tech question. Can you call me when you get a chance?" My mom does the same thing, and I have some other family members who will do that. They've inspired a couple of blog posts over the years. Basically, if you ever see me write a blog post about password security or running updates, it's probably been inspired by some member of my extended family.
I'm just sitting here nodding, agreeing with you. It sounds exactly like my household, right? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Kent, we didn't talk. One thing I forgot to mention, Richard, we wanted to know if in your travels, have you had any customs or any police stories that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I will. So for a number of years, I was doing a lot of work in Alberta.
There's Canada, right? Yeah.
Yep, in Canada. Yep. And one of the school districts I was working with, or school divisions, was in fairly far north, about 5 hours north of Edmonton, and because of where I live and where airlines go or don't go and the geopolitical landscape of that, I used to have to fly from Maine to Arizona to Edmonton and then take another little flight further north. Okay? Yeah. So I really went to every corner of the North America to get there. So long story short, I get into the Edmonton airport late at night, like around midnight. I had a cold. I'd been traveling at that point for like 18 hours. And I get there and I go to customs, and I've been to Canada many times. I have many stamps in my passport going to Canada. And they say, what is your purpose in Canada? I said, well, I'm going to work. And they said, oh, well, what kind of work do you do? And I said, well, I'm going to work at a school division to do a workshop for a few days. And the school division is right near the oil fields. right near the oil fields, which at the time were booming in production, as you probably are familiar with oil fields. And so at the time I was in my mid-30s. I was in my mid-30s and still looked like I could probably pass for my late 20s at that point. So I kind of looked the part of someone who might be going to work in the oil fields and is telling a story. So long story short, I get sent to this extra room and they say, oh, again, go through the whole thing. Do you have a contract? Can you show us the contract? I'm like, yep, here's the contract. Da, 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 da. And they put in my passport a little stamp, a little exception as a performer. They labeled me as a performer. So I had the same designation that that Mick Jagger would get coming into Edmonton, or Britney Spears. I get the same designation now when I go to Canada as a performer. Yep. So that was a good one.
You got to bed around 3 a.m. after doing your performance in the back room.
It was late. It was well past midnight when I finally got to the hotel. And the worst part of it was I had to get up and fly the next morning to get the rest of the way there. So I got there with like 2 hours of sleep that night. So that was a customs one.
Nice, nice.
He
Thank
still
you for
gets phone
sharing
calls
that.
from Cirque du Soleil. He still gives him calls. Checks
Right.
in on him on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Speaking of performers, one time I was at the Bet Show in London, great tech event in London, and a friend of mine who's in the ed tech space as well was from London originally. He didn't live in London then, but he took me out to show me some places, and through 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon and knowing so and so and so and so, we end up at a party, at a house party. And the house is owned by Sting's son.
What?
Okay. Yeah, it was just like this little house, just like this little townhouse. I'd call it a townhouse. Little house, and I don't know how many people are there. Like, felt like there were about 100 people crammed in there, which for me at the time would have been like 1/3 of the population of the town that I live in. And I started talking to this woman who was just standing there next to me, who looked equally out of place and out of uncomfortable in this environment. And we leave, and my friend says to me, "Do you know who that was?" I'm like, no idea who that is. He goes, "Oh, she's proper British pop star." I'm like, "Who is it?" "Sophie Alice Bextor." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, okay, she's famous.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, she's like the Kelly Clarkson of the UK. I'm like,
I'm still stuck on the fact that it was Sting's son's house, right? Big Sting fan, yeah.
Yeah, like
what a
I don't
small
know how
world.
that.
Well, you're a performer,
Yeah,
so you're gonna start running into people like this all the time.
Yeah,
They're gonna start,
yeah.
Aerosmith is gonna call you and say, "How do we put our video onto TikTok? We don't really know how to do that yet."
And how do we get into Canada?
Yeah, no, I don't recognize famous. Like I said, unless they were a grunge star in the 90s, I don't recognize famous people. Like you pretty much got to be the president or in a grunge band from the 90s for me to recognize you. I've been on so many flights where I've been like there's been someone famous on the flight, and I have no idea that they're famous. Once talked to a guy who was in Lord of the Rings on a flight, and I'm blanking on the guy's name now, but I afterward, I was just chatting like, "Oh, what do you do?" He's like, "I'm an actor," or whatever, and like I had no idea. And I told a buddy of mine who's really into Lord of the Rings, and he was like, "You didn't get his autograph?" I'm like,
No, it's not about the autograph, right?
Like, I don't know. I'm like, you didn't get a picture?
I don't really care about stars either, but I tell you what, I have one quick one, and that was when I was in Australia, and I went there just for my 50th birthday, like a present to myself, to go diving, and I'm sitting in this hotel on Christmas morning, and I ran into the lead singer from the Little River Band, the original Little River Band, and he's like,
yeah.
"You know the Little River Band?" I said, "Yeah, the Albatross is my brother." He's like, "That's my song, Cool Change. I wrote that." I'm like, "Oh my God."
Cool.
It was so fascinating to meet him and his girlfriend or wife at the time, his partner at the time. And it was just fascinating. But I just had a picture with him, and that's it. Boom, done. You know, it was great to meet him. I
Yeah.
shared about 2 hours worth of just back and forth, a couple rounds of drinks with him. It was a great guy. And just they're people
Yeah, it's
too
cool.
sometimes. Not all the time, right? I don't know. He's somewhere on a
Yeah,
cruise ship
you know,
working.
I've never had a run in. I've never had a run in with someone who was famous and was like a jerk about being famous. Here's a funny story about famous people. Woody Harrelson, famous for Cheers, White Man Can't Jump, a whole bunch of
Zombieland.
stuff. Zombieland, right? So he was on a flight that I was going to Pittsburgh a while back, pre-pandemic, and he was sitting right in front of me, like right in front of me, and he got up to go to the bathroom, not wearing any shoes. The airplane bathroom is not the place to go barefoot.
Well, if he's listening to this,
That's not water on the floor.
I'm looking for Twinkies.
Yeah.
Oh man, you have some great stories about travel, and you are famous. I think you're famous in the IT world. You really are, and it's shown by your following, and
Well, thanks.
it's shown by your hard work over so many years. I think the international teachers that listen to this, the other teachers that listen to this, and my mom listening to this, they're gonna be pleasantly surprised at the backstories of your life that you've shared with us. It gives you a little bit of a human face to all these techie things that you do for us. We see you on your videos, and it's like, oh, there he is again. But now we get to see the side of life that you're sitting in this, you're freezing in this main historical place,
yeah.
right?
Cold right now.
Oh, I love it. Kent, you have any wrap-up stuff or any more kind of questions
No,
before we
I just
turn it over?
want to thank Richard. You've been fantastic to visit with, and I really enjoy your stuff. So thank you, Richard.
He's gonna have to turn on his heater.
Well, thank
yeah.
you. It was fun.
You need to get your heater going. Do you have any last thoughts for us then from the windy, cold part of Maine?
I guess the last thought would be, if you're looking at any kind of new technology, think about how your students can use it to do something that they couldn't do before. Think about what kind of cool thing can they do with this technology that they couldn't have done without it. And that's, at the end of the day, it comes down to, can you create a cool learning experience for kids? That's the bottom line.
Oh, I don't think we could have said it any better. I'm going to have to steal that from you when I go talk to some more teachers. All right, Kent, bring us to a close. He's usually pretty clever about this.
Oh, whoo.
Yeah, he's falling asleep,
now.
ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
It's been a long day. Hey, by the way, Kent, we just had Richard Byrne on as a guest. Did you know that?
I love that guy from the Talking Heads, right?
No, he's
I
not
love
the
that
Talking
guy.
Heads guy.
Nobody gets that reference
No,
anymore.
we do.
No one gets that reference
We do in the
anymore.
Middle East, yes. Old men.
Well, we've Richard, thank you for spending time with us tonight. It's been absolutely wonderful. So thank you. On behalf of Greg, the single guy, Matt, the family guy who's not here, and Kent, the cat guy, I want to thank Canadian famous performer Richard Byrne and a side gig in technology. It's free.
FreeTech4Teachers.com.
Free Tech for Teachers. We'll put it in the show notes. Richard Byrne, Free Tech for Teachers. We want to thank you for joining us, and we look forward to following your work and hope we get the chance to chat with you again. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks, guys.